reflect those of station staff, management, and advertisers.
All right, what's going on, everybody? A very happy Monday, a very busy Monday morning. My goodness, we have a couple breaking news stories that we're going to be sharing with you. Thank you for being here. Occupy Democrats Network. You could be on the Washington Press Network, the FM AM dial here, locally, KSHP, my YouTube page, at PTL Radio Show, pushingthelimits.live, TikTok, Twitch, X, Blue Sky. We're everywhere. We appreciate you being a part of the show. And we have a special guest coming up here at the bottom of the hour, a perfect guy to have in studio to be talking about these two breaking news stories that I'm going to be getting into. Former NLPD Lieutenant Leonard Cardinal is going to be joining us in studio at the bottom of the hour. But two breaking news stories that we're going to be covering here that I want to get to ASAP. And I'll start with the good news. In my opinion, there's some good news and some bad news today. I'm going to start with the good news. And the good news is, and this is not a shocker to me, with great police work, we have learned that the alleged shooter in the New York City United Healthcare CEO murder of Brian Thompson, police believe they have their killer. And his name is Luigi Maggioni. He was picked up at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, after an employee called the cops. That employee is a hero at McDonald's. Multiple law enforcement officials are saying that on his person, they found multiple fake IDs, a gun with a suppressor. They've also said he was in possession of a document railing against the healthcare industry. A backpack believed to belong to the suspect in the killing was found in Central Park on Friday, but investigators have reason to believe now that they have their suspect. And what's so weird about this is I just went on this guy's Twitter page. He's an engineer, educated young man. So this is leading me to believe, and I'm shocked that I'm going to be saying this on the air, that he may have just acted on his own. I mean, the way that this was executed, now clearly he made a lot of mistakes. He left a water bottle. He unmasked himself. He went into a Starbucks. He made a lot of mistakes, but still did a lot of things that some would call professional. So good police work. That employee who called the cops a hero, being very vigilant and aware. And I know a lot of people seem to, blame the media for a lot of problems in society these days, but this is a situation where the media helps, right? Everybody knew who this guy was, what he looked like, at least. And now we're learning that this is a young man in his mid-20s that may have acted alone, which, again, is surprising to me. But again, his name is Luigi Maggioni. His ex-Twitter account is still up there. Last I checked 15 minutes ago. Somebody might have taken it down by now, but it's still up there. I was just looking at his Twitter page. Posting about a lot of different things. And I had a few minutes to take a look at it. Did not find a Facebook page, but I did find an X account that was clearly his. And I was looking that up. So, good news. Congratulations to law enforcement and the FBI who worked vigilantly, and police in Altoona. Now, apparently he was arrested without incident, although police did say that he was acting very strange, very weird. But I mean, he had all the evidence on his person to know that this was the guy. So they have their man. I would be shocked if he ever saw the light of day ever again for the rest of his life, but you never know with our justice system. So speaking of our justice system, I told you that I wouldn't have been surprised if we learned today that Daniel Penny walked free, that I wouldn't have been surprised if the jury found him not guilty on all charges. And that's exactly what took place earlier this morning. A jury unanimously found that Daniel Penny was found not guilty. Now, I've shared my opinions on this, and I've made them very well known. That in society, we can't say it's all right to kill somebody because they're making threats to others. We can't do that as a society. And I feel like that's exactly what took place. And for those of you out there that continue to say that Daniel Penny is a hero, very similar to the same people out there that said Derek Chauvin's a hero, that Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero, choking somebody when they're unconscious and continuing to keep that grip on them does not make you a hero, in my personal opinion. So it's not over for Daniel Penny. I'm sure there are plenty of positives and negatives with his future. The negative being is that the person who had died, his father has already filed a civil suit against Daniel Penny. And I could be wrong on this one, but I think Daniel Penny will be found liable for the death of this man. So he's still going to have some legal battles, but not criminally. This will be civil. And listen, this is a tragic story of somebody, and I don't care about his past. I don't care that he might have broken the law. That doesn't matter to me at all. All that matters is what happened in that moment. And as I've gone over this case, I've said it time and time again, this was someone that was screaming, yelling, scaring people, and threatening people. Probably, if police got involved, it would have been a public disturbance. This was somebody who struggled from mental illness. Somebody who had a long police record, yes. But in that moment, he did not make physical contact with anybody. Why is that important? It's important because now what we're saying is, even if somebody doesn't make physical contact with somebody and doesn't have a weapon, but is scaring people and screaming at people, we can put that person in a chokehold and kill them, and there's going to be no legal ramifications. That's what this case says. So for those of you out there that are calling Daniel Penny a hero, which I believe he is not, I want you to think about that if you have a brain, if you're willing to get out of your right-wing racist bubble for a moment and just think for a moment. We've all been in situations in our life where people made us feel uncomfortable. I would imagine many of you have been in public before where maybe you had someone that was homeless. Maybe you had somebody that, was talking to themselves or was mentally ill that made you feel scared or made you feel uncomfortable. Maybe you've even been in a situation where somebody verbally was threatening you or somebody else, and it made you scared. And I don't blame you for being scared. Would you have been okay with someone else killing that person in that moment? Think about the age, too. What if it's like a kid, an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, or a 90-year-old? Are you saying it's okay to kill somebody and claim self-defense even though that person never put their hands on anybody? Because that's what this case is saying, and I find that to be very, very dangerous. So I want to play you a little bit of audio from a few different kinds of people. And then I'll probably take some phone calls, and we'll be taking a lot more phone calls later on in the show about this case. But this is Jordan Neely's father. This is the man who died, who was put in a chokehold for 6 minutes and was killed. His father didn't do anything wrong. This is his father speaking outside the courthouse earlier today after the verdict.
I just want to say, I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now? I had enough of this. System is rigged. Mm-hmm. Come on, people. Let's do something about this.
So listen, his father didn't do anything wrong. And I don't want to hear people say, well, his father was a terrible dad. He didn't do this for his son. He didn't do that. I'm not going to listen to that. Okay. His son obviously suffered from severe mental illness. His mother was murdered when he was 14 years old. Obviously screwed him up for the rest of his life. I'm not condoning any crimes that his son committed. All I'm simply saying is his son was mentally unstable, was a schizophrenic, and had a lot of issues going. And I agree with his father. He didn't deserve to die like this. So I'm not going to sit here and attack his father, who, in my opinion, didn't do anything wrong. And his son was put in and out of institutions for most of his life. So the system failed his son. Now, this is where I have some disagreement with some people that I'm with when it comes to this verdict. I disagree with the verdict. But this is one of the BLM leaders who, by the way, I'm trying to get on the show. And some are saying that he's inciting violence. This is what one of those BLM leaders had to say outside the courthouse today.
We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Right.
I'm tired.
Okay, well, that guy's an idiot. He's an idiot. Calling for vigilantes and violence, which is clearly what he's doing. Not only is that not going to make the situation better, but you're a hypocrite. Let me be very clear. I don't condone any violence. Now, if people want to protest, that's fine. I don't blame them, quite frankly. But when you ask for black vigilantism, which I believe that's what he's saying, that's wrong. And he's an idiot. But there are a lot of people in this country that are black, and there are a lot of minorities and people that look like me that feel like this was an injustice. And anybody who puts Daniel Penny on a pedestal, like he's some sort of hero, or the Republican Party, which will probably not only support this guy, but probably invite him on a stage at the next Republican National Convention, it's disgusting. This guy, Daniel Petty, in my personal opinion, committed a crime that day. Now, a jury decided otherwise. Doesn't mean we have to agree with the decision, but it is very interesting, isn't it, that when Donald Trump is prosecuted and he becomes a 34-count felon, all those on the right say, oh, well, the judge was biased, the jury was biased, it was a Democrat jury. But when you get a verdict like this, all those on the right say, oh, what a great job the jury did, the system worked. So there are a bunch of idiots and hypocrites as well. I don't like the jury's decision here. I don't. And we've learned that one of Kyle Rittenhouse's attorneys helped Daniel Penny in this case. Not a surprise. Yeah, I do believe that Daniel Penny should be in jail. I've been very clear on my opinions on that. We cannot say it's okay as a society to kill somebody, whether that was your intention or not. We cannot say in society it's okay to kill somebody because someone's screaming and yelling and making people feel uncomfortable and making threats. You can't just put the law into your own hands and choke somebody until they die. So if some people out there want to call this guy a hero, fine. You're sick as far as I'm concerned. You are sick. So I disagree with that one of those BLM leaders that there needs to be more black vigilantes out there. And he's basically condoning violence. And really, it really hurts the message when you start talking like that. I think he's wrong. Now, here's another BLM leader. This one is a female. Again, one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter, the organization, speaking outside the courthouse.
Because I have to hug a father who knows that the murderer of his son will most likely go free. Who has to look in the face of a jury that no matter the facts, no matter the expert witnesses, no matter the people yelling on that train that day to let Jordan go, you will kill him. They will not find a white man guilty of killing a black man in modern day America. This is no different than Jim Crow. This looks like a picture out of the picture book when you look at that anonymous jury. We have baby boomers who were there doing Jim Crow on this jury. We have young people who are looking at Daniel Penny as a hero. And what America is a hero, a killer. He didn't give a crap about Jordan.
Now, I don't believe this is Jim Crow. I'm not willing to go to those lengths. Here's what I'm willing to say. I believe that if Daniel Penny was black and he put a white man in a chokehold and killed him, I believe we might have seen a different outcome here. That's my personal opinion. I do not believe that Daniel Penny was trying to kill him, but that doesn't change my opinions. I don't believe his intent that day was to kill a black man. I don't. But just because it's not your intent to kill somebody doesn't mean that you didn't do anything wrong. Now, again, the jury found him not guilty. There have been a lot of cases in my life where I disagreed with the jury. The O.J. Simpson case is a perfect example. I have always believed, and still believe to this day, that O.J. Simpson is a double murderer. Why? Based on the evidence. The DNA evidence, the weapon that was used, O.J. Simpson's priors with his ex-wife, physically assaulting her, his anger issues. He had a past with her. I believe O.J. Simpson was responsible for the death of Ronald Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson. I believe the jury got it wrong. And I also believe that Marcia Clark and Paul Darden did not do a good job. The prosecution did not do a good job. There's a lot of reasons why maybe a jury comes to a certain conclusion. And maybe you can fault the prosecutors in this case as well. I disagree with the verdict. We can disagree with the verdict, and I can give you my opinions why, but it won't change the fact that Daniel Penny's not going to jail. We know that for sure. Now, let me ask you all a question. If that happened again on a subway and Daniel Penny was on the subway, you think he would do the same thing? I don't think he would. So I think we all need to think about that. It's one thing if somebody physically assaults somebody. It's one thing if somebody's brandishing a weapon. If that was the case, I'd be calling Daniel Penny a hero as well. But that didn't happen here. That didn't happen. There was no weapon. There was no physical contact. I can tell you right now, my understanding based on law is that if you don't make physical contact with somebody, that doesn't give somebody the right to kill somebody. But in this case, it's a huge national story. I think Daniel Penny, the fact that he served, might have played a role here. The fact that he didn't have any priors might have played a role here. And I think the defense focused on the fact that this man who was killed had a criminal past, even though I don't believe his criminal past had anything to do. See, this is what's so frustrating about. There's so many things that are frustrating when it comes to our justice system. Let me give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to make an analogy here between the Kyle Rittenhouse case and this case. So this man who was killed had a bunch of priors. I think he was arrested something like 42 times, right? That was allowed to be in the courtroom, meaning Daniel Penny's defense team was allowed to bring that up. Okay, fine. Even though I don't think it has no bearing on what took place that day. In the Kyle Rittenhouse case, the right-wing judge said that it was not admissible in court. Video of Kyle Rittenhouse a week before saying that he was literally dreaming about killing a bunch of innocent black people or black people that he considered were shoplifting. He literally said that he wished that he could shoot these people. And the judge says that's not admissible in court. But yet in this case, they allowed the defense to talk about Neely's background. Is that consistent? You have a 17-year-old who literally is dreaming about killing people for stealing liquor. He's literally said that on video, and the judge didn't allow that in a courtroom. Yet, Neely, his criminal past and the statements that he's made in his behavior, that was allowed. We have a lack of consistency in our justice system. Kyle Rittenhouse, he talks about shooting people. That's inadmissible. But let's talk about Neely's past, even though, in my opinion, it has nothing to do with what took place that day. You're telling me Kyle Rittenhouse dreaming about killing people shoplifting a week before wasn't his train of thought in his mind when he decided to go to that Black Lives Matter protest with an AR-15 dressed up in camouflage, that a week before that wasn't his mindset, dreaming about shooting people? No, because he was acting as a vigilante. He had a thought in his mind that he dreamt about shooting people. I'll take a few phone calls now. 702-221-7283. Again, the number if you do or would like to be a part of the program, 702-221-7283. But before we take phone calls, I do want to take a break. So here's what we are going to do. We are going to have a special guest in studio who's going to talk about the Daniel Penny case. He's going to give his expertise. Decades-long retired NLPD lieutenant and current president of the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 443. This guy has a wealth of experience when it comes to vigilantes, when it comes to disorderly conduct. So I want to get his legal expertise on this story. And we'll probably talk about the CEO shooting suspect that was apprehended in Pennsylvania. So we're going to talk about all that. Leonard Cardinal is going to be joining us next in studio, so we'll get his thoughts. And I want to take some phone calls on the other side as well. We're going to take phone calls about this case, your thoughts on the Daniel Penny case, the fact that a jury has now found him not guilty. He's walking free, still going to face a civil suit, but he's walking free. Your thoughts on that? We're going to talk about this guy who was apprehended in Pennsylvania. His name is Luigi Maggioni. Look, I believe he's a young man in his mid-20s, an engineer with a degree, an educated young man. And now, in my personal, if he's 26, by the way, and now in my personal opinion, I don't think he's ever going to see the light of day again for the rest of his life. So we'll talk about this and much, much more. We'll take your phone calls on the other side. We'll be back in 90 seconds with our special guest, and we want to hear from you, agree or disagree. 702-221-7283. Take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Pushing the Limits, right here on KSHP.
Hey, everybody, are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York-style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premium Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super. Hero, that is. Because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
Who would have thought there'd be so many kids playing ice hockey in the desert? Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, founded by Gina Yusufzai 8 years ago, made it possible for families who can't afford the equipment and fees. Donate today at www.hockeyforkids.org and help us continue making a difference. Join us in supporting Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, where every kid gets a shot at the starting line. Just a reminder, our website is www.hockeyforkids.org.
Have you ever dreamed of having your own radio show or a podcast, but just didn't think it was possible? Well, dreams can come true. Radio U. Radio U is a 5-day course that'll teach you how to acquire your dream show. We'll teach you how to host, how to write commercials, how to interview, how to market, how to write a contract, and most importantly, how to monetize your dream radio show. You'll learn from some of the best in the business with over 75 years in broadcast experience. You'll learn from people like me. And the best part? Every single student will be live on the radio as part of the class. Plus, one student from each class will get their very own radio show. You'll be live on the air right here in Las Vegas. Radio U. The 5-day course is being offered at $699. For more information, give Radio U a call. 702-763-5024. That's 702-763-5024. Or check them out at RadioYOU101.com.
It's time to wake up and win the weekend. You're listening to the boss of the big ball. JP the Tech, giving you that grease. Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time for the live action on Vegas Scoreboard Express on KSHP 107.1 FM and AM 1400. Dive into the game day with my in-depth analysis, expert predictions, and winning plays from the sharpest minds in sports betting. It's more than just placing bets. It's about securing wins. Head over to jptheticket.com and be sure to tune in to KSHP this weekend from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time to ride the winning wave with VSX. Tune in and get your money back from the sports book. All money, all sports, no bull. Miss the live show? Subscribe to Vegas Scoreboard Express on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, and wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts and radio listening.
Clear Sky Resorts invites you to experience the future of luxury glamping at their newest resort, opening August 1st, 2024 near Bryce Canyon. Guests at the first and only glass-domed stargazing resort in the U.S. will be immersed in the stunning scenery of the resort's private 80-acre canyon, both indoors and out, and nights in your sky dome will be like sleeping in an aquarium of stars. Located in Cannonville, Utah, on Scenic Byway 12, voted one of the most scenic roads in America, the resort will feature lots of fun on-resort activities, as well as one of the world's largest glass-domed restaurants. To book your reservation, please call 1-888 704-4445 or visit clearskyresorts.com.
Craving something sweet? Head to 777 Cookies and More. From warm, gooey chocolate chip cookies to unique seasonal treats. Whether it's a classic cookie, coffee, or catering needs, we've got you covered. Come in for a taste of heaven today at 777 Cookies and More. Your sweet escape. Located at Sahara and Decatur in Sahara Pavilion North. 777 Cookies and More, 4750 West Sahara and Decatur. Sweetness awaits at 777cookies.com. Since 1949, Norm's restaurants have served up classic comfort food and unbeatable value across Southern California. And they're now open in Las Vegas at 4605 West Charleston at Decatur. Enjoy favorites like the Bigger, Better Breakfast, T-Bone Steak Trio, and more. Norm's is finally open in Vegas at 4605 West Charleston at Decatur. Visit norms.com for more information.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. A very busy Monday. Check out the website, pushingthelimits.live, where you can buy merchandise, shirts, hats, beanies, you name it. Support what we do, pushingthelimits.live, and, of course, the official gaming bar of the Pushing the Limits radio show. Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones. I was just there over the weekend. Great promotions, including the Pass the Puck contest, where you could win up to $500 in free slot play just for playing a machine during a Vegas Golden Knights hockey game. Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones. All right, so we're covering all the breaking news. The alleged shooter of CEO Brian Thompson has been apprehended. Luigi Maggioni is his name. And he was picked up at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. He had a manifesto in his backpack. He had the weapon that police believe he used in the killing. I think he's going away for a long time. Now the only question might be, are there other people involved and motive, which I think is clear, but we're probably going to learn a little bit more about that. Also, Daniel Penny has been found not guilty on all charges. He is walking a free man. So joining us in studio to talk about these cases, he's been on this program before. He is a 25-year retired NLPD lieutenant and the current president of the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 443. A pleasure to have Leonard Cardinal in studio with us. Leonard, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Hi, Brian. Really good. Thanks for having me.
You decided to come in today on a very, very busy news day. So
yeah, especially this morning, yeah.
Yeah. So with your expertise, and thank you for being here, by the way, with your expertise, I think we probably are going to disagree a little bit on the Daniel Penny outcome. So you told me coming in here that you didn't even think he should have been charged. So tell me why.
Well, Daniel Penny's riding the subway. He wasn't looking for trouble, just going about his life. He's a Marine, so he's well trained. And I kind of feel like if you're in a subway car in New York City, which I grew up in New Jersey, so I've ridden in many times in the subway, and it's a little daunting. You know, it's a little crowded. It's enclosed. And someone who is high on drugs comes in, and you have a lot of average people there, and he's kind of yelling and screaming and then threatening to kill people. So the other side of that is, if nobody does anything and you wait till he's killing people, then maybe somebody gets hurt. So it appears that Daniel Penny thought the threat was real and he meant to really hurt someone, got him in what they call a chokehold. I'm not sure what kind of hold it was, and took him down. And according to the news reports, he lightened up just after a while and just held him down, waiting for the police. And Daniel Penny had testified that he didn't know he was dead. He thought he was just holding him down and maybe he passed out. He waited for the police. When the police got there, he turned over custody and cooperated completely with the police as if he had done nothing wrong. So my position, and I guess this is not really saying in a completely professional way, but if you come into a subway high on drugs and you're threatening to kill people and you're kind of out of control, somebody might engage with you. Somebody might try to defend the people. You have a right to defend yourself or other people.
I hear you, but here's where we might disagree in that while he could have physically harmed somebody, I'm not saying that's not possible. He didn't. And the moment that Daniel Penny in that moment put him in a chokehold, he had never made physical contact with anybody. Now listen, if he had made physical contact with anybody, even slapped somebody, I think Daniel Penny would have been in the right. If you're physically assaulting somebody, hey, if you get taken out, that's on you. Don't put your hands on somebody. So, but that didn't happen. That's my problem. Can we use deadly force, even if he didn't intentionally try to kill him, which I'm willing to believe that Daniel Penny was not trying to kill him. He still kept him in a chokehold, regardless of how tight the chokehold was. He still put him in a chokehold after he was unconscious. To me, that's negligence. For example, if Daniel Penny put him on his stomach and he had a couple other guys help him, and they were just holding his legs, holding his arms, just keeping him down
like
until
an
the police.
in-custody death.
Right. I would have been totally okay with that. But that's not what Daniel Penny did. Even when he was motionless for up to a minute, they said, and he kept the chokehold. I think it's in my opinion, a very dangerous precedence that we're setting, that we are saying if somebody is scaring you or they're even verbally threatening you, that gives the right to use deadly force on somebody.
Can I bring up some legal issues?
Sure.
In New York State, they do have the Good Samaritan law. So that protects you from criminal or civil charges if you're acting in good faith when you engage.
Mm-hmm.
Also, police have a use of force continuum. Military police have a use of force continuum. Even in the military, if you're not in the military police, you still have kind of a use of force continuum. They tell you when you can use deadly force, when you possibly shouldn't, and how to make those decisions. There's another law in New York. They don't have a stand your ground law in New York. They kind of have a you need to try to get out of the situation before you stand your ground. But if you're on a New York subway, there's really nowhere to go. There's really nowhere to
Understood
concede.
that.
So if you take all those factors in, and remember, he's not law enforcement, he's a citizen. So you don't have to escalate. You don't have to go from a certain level to another level like a police officer does and try to use other options. You just go, and as a citizen, you can go to whatever level you think you need to go to. I don't know what kind of training he had as far as chokeholds. Chokeholds are dangerous. There's a lateral vascular neck restraint, which makes you pass out. But a chokehold indicates that you go right across the esophagus.
Mm-hmm.
You're right on the throat.
Why not just hold him down? Why not just flip him over with a couple other guys and hold him down? That's another thing. There were some people that were trying to assist, and they were saying, hey, you can release him now. There's a guy in the video that's trying to help and say, hey, you could let him go now, and he still doesn't let him go. I get what you're saying. I don't think Daniel Penny had intent to kill anybody. He certainly didn't have intent to walk on a subway that day and kill somebody. But here's my point, right? Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, your wife was killed in a car accident the night before, right? Something tragic happens in your family. You're not in the right state of mind. You're on drugs. You're depressed, maybe even suicidal, okay? You get on a subway. You're not in the right frame of mind. I'm just hypothetically speaking, giving this as an example. I'm going to kill somebody. I don't care if I die. You're not in the right mental frame of mind, and you're saying some irrational things. I don't want that person to die. I also don't want that person to harm other people. I get it. I don't want that person to be killed either. Every situation is different. Now, I understand this guy had a criminal past, right? Mentally ill, schizophrenic. I get all that. But I feel like some people did that with the George Floyd thing as well. Well, he was tendering fake money. He was a bad guy. He did this, this, and this. When we know, and I know this is a different case.
Yeah, that one was clear cut.
Totally understand that. But the worst part about that video was in the George Floyd case? It's when George Floyd lost consciousness and he was basically medically dead. And Derek Chauvin, while in custody, still put the knee on the neck. Now, slightly in this situation, I felt that same in the moment that this man was unconscious and literally dying. Penny didn't release him. And I felt like that was the worst part of the video in this case.
In police, there's shoot, don't shoot scenarios. And let me give you an example of one that we've been through.
Mm-hmm.
You're on an airplane, you're a marshal, and somebody comes out of the bathroom in the area where the pilot is with a suitcase, stands in front of everyone and says, I've got a bomb. Now, some people use deadly force right at that point.
Yeah.
Some people want to see what comes next, and we could talk all day about what you should do, but my thing is, if you're going to appear on an airplane in front of the public with a suitcase and yell, I have a bomb, you might, you're obviously out of your mind. You may have somebody use force on you. And I believe that
but deadly
charging
force.
him, but didn't charging him set a bigger national precedent, a world precedent? Aren't people going to hesitate now to engage? Aren't people going to hesitate to defend other people and kind of just stand there and let things happen?
I think if there's a good question you ask, I think if there's something to learn from this case, it's this. Don't put somebody in a chokehold unless they have a weapon. Hold somebody down, try to restrain somebody. I don't have a problem with that. But don't put somebody in a chokehold, and certainly don't keep them in a chokehold when they're unconscious. I don't want to stop people from, how should I phrase this, helping others or protecting people. I don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem with the way Daniel Penny did it. Will it deter some from maybe helping others? I hope not. But it should also stop people from putting people in chokeholds. I mean, I think of the Eric Garner case as well, but that, again, I know that was a different case. What was Garner doing? And I know Garner's mother was speaking outside the courthouse today because, in a way, brings back memories for her, I'm sure, of what happened to her son. It's a tragic situation. What was Garner doing? He was selling cigarettes illegally to those under 18. He wasn't even selling hard drugs. I'm not condoning that, but the man, I think we could agree, did not deserve to die. Was he resisting a little bit, Garner? Yeah. Was he argumentative? Yeah. But there was no reason to put him in a chokehold. There were 8 officers there. Get handcuffs on him. Get him on the ground. Don't choke him when the man, I just think.
But what is the equivalent there? Because one is these are trained police officers, and they're held accountable for being law enforcement. And one is a gentleman riding the subway.
The chokehold, they were not trained to do that in that situation.
That's a good question, because I don't know
in that
exactly
case,
what the military
He was
teaches.
not found guilty of any crime. But from what I learned about that case, they're not trained to put you in that type of chokehold. Certainly not in that situation when Garner was not an immediate threat to officers. They were not in fear of their lives in any way, shape, or form. He didn't have any weapons. He wasn't throwing punches. So that was so let me ask you another question. And this is where race comes into play, where I asked this question to you. If Daniel Penny was black and the man who died was white, do you think this would have gone down the same way?
It would have been completely different. In this country,
so you agree with me?
It would have been absolutely 100%
Tell me why you feel that way.
difference. Well, on a larger scale, when you look at the previous election, when you look at some of the things Donald Trump said and some of his surrogates, I mean, he basically came out and said, do you want a white male or do you want a black female? I mean, and I think that rang to a lot of people.
Right.
And it's also saying that it's okay to be racist. It's okay to blame them.
So you think that if this was a black man who did this, he probably would have been prosecuted?
What about Rittenhouse? Same thing.
Yeah.
Same question. It would have been handled completely different.
So you think they would have been prosecuted? How do you think it would have been? What do you think the outcome would have been?
I think that the public at large probably, not so much in New York because they don't have as many, but I think the public would have been outraged and they would have wanted criminal charges and everybody would have went with the flow. And, and that's just my opinion.
No, I agree with you 100%. And I think we're wearing blinders if we don't feel that way. I completely agree with you 150%. Now, this is why I brought up Kyle Rittenhouse. And off the air, you're like, well, 2 different cases. You're absolutely right. They're 2 different cases. However, Kyle Rittenhouse is seen as some sort of hero from the far right. I'm not saying every Republican thinks Rittenhouse is the greatest, because they don't. But Kyle Rittenhouse has been paid to make speeches by, Turning Point USA. He's been seen as some sort of hero to some people. Obviously, I'm very uncomfortable with that because I think Rittenhouse is an idiot.
He went down there to be a hero.
Thank you.
That was his original motivation.
Bad motivation, in my opinion.
Walking down the street, AR-15. I mean, how many people do you know that would go to a bad situation with an AR-15 strapped to themselves walking down the street?
In camouflage.
That's pretty,
Exactly. And a week before, Leonard, he had said that he was dreaming about shooting people that were shoplifting. So we know what his train of thought. Do I think he's a murderer? No. I think he's an idiot, very ignorant, should have never been there. But the reason why I bring him up, and you're absolutely right off the air when you said, different cases, you're right. But the far right look up to Kyle Rittenhouse, who, in my opinion, is an idiot, who nobody should look up to. He's a moron. And I feel like I'm getting the same stuff with this guy. Now, I'm not saying this guy had bad intentions like Kyle Rittenhouse. I'm not saying this guy wanted to be the hero. I don't even think he wanted that. But Anybody who wants to help a Good Samaritan or a public, that's one thing. But, and we might disagree a little bit on the outcome of the jury and whether you think he should. But I just feel like it's wrong. I want to talk about people like you that I think are heroes, people that risk their life every single day for the benefit of the general public, firefighters who go into, fires and save family members and pets, law enforcement, people who serve our country. Yes, Daniel Penny did serve the country. In that aspect, I would call him a hero, sure. But I'm uncomfortable calling him a hero.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. But for most of us, I'll speak for myself. It just felt like going to work every day.
Well,
if you're cut out for it, it's rewarding. It's a good way to spend your life. But in the Rittenhouse situation, like I said, your mindset. We take into account what is your mindset. If you're going to strap an AR-15 to yourself and go down to a riot and walk down the middle of the street, you should expect, and I think he expected, to be put in a situation where you're going to probably have to use your rifle.
Right. I agree. I agree with you 100%. Well, why don't we take some phone calls, Leonard? Obviously I have somebody in studio who is a professional when it comes to law enforcement. So that's why it's important to share that perspective. He's Leonard Cardinal. He's a former 25-year NLPD lieutenant. I think we agree on some things. We might disagree on some things, but I think as a whole, we agree on a lot when it comes to this case. Number to call, 702-221-7283. And again, the number, if you want to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-7283. And if you have law enforcement questions, don't ask me, ask Leonard, and we're taking your calls. All right, who are we starting off with? Let's go to Carl. Carl is first up on PTO. Hi, Carl. What's going on? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Carl, I don't mean to cut you off, but we're not really doing Donald Trump right now. I welcome you to, I welcome you to call back, and we can do. This is one segment where I don't want to talk about Donald Trump, but I appreciate the call, Carl. Thank you. 702-221-7283. We're talking about Daniel Penny, found innocent, not guilty on all charges. Now, the jury didn't call him a hero. There's some people on social media saying, well, the jury thinks he's a hero. No, they don't.
They did applaud.
Right. The jury found him not guilty. So whether they think he's a hero or not is something completely different. And maybe some of the jurors will be doing interviews with the media. That's possible. All right, 702-221-7283. Let's go to Jack. Jack is next on PTL. What's up, Jack?
Well, the news report, if you read the news, it says that after they acquitted him,
I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to be a white man. I'm embarrassed, okay? And for people like you to make excuses and obfuscate to other excuses, you're not allowed to put your hands on anybody. This guy didn't pose any threat to anybody in a physical manner. Yeah, he didn't, okay? He didn't pose a threat that this trained Marine couldn't have handled if he wanted to, if the guy would have snapped into action. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that you bring up that he said, "Oh,
were you in the military? Do you understand? You don't bring up that he was shouting, "Hey, I want some food. I want something to drink." It's embarrassing. And if this was a black man that killed a black man, he would have went to jail. If this was a white man that killed a white man, he went to jail. It's a white man that killed a black man. It's the only reason there's no.
All right. Well, hang on the line. Let's let Leonard respond. Go ahead, Leonard.
Well, my first thought is was he mentally ill and out of his mind, or was he asking for food? Because if you're asking for food and water, then you have your wits about you. Then you're not someone who doesn't understand the situation you're in.
You can't be crazy and hungry.
Right, but if you go in a subway and you start yelling that you're going to kill people, then you might expect a response from people, and it's not accurate to say you cannot put your hands on people. That's absolutely not accurate.
I live in Philadelphia. I ride the subway all the time, and people shout that they're crazy and all this. No one grabs anybody around the throat and kills them.
Well, that's not at issue. What's at issue is, can you do it? Is it legal? Under the Good Samaritan law, did he act in good faith? And I believe in the jury. I believe in the jury system. I think that our system in America is not perfect, but it works. And he was put on trial. And then yesterday, Bragg dropped one of the charges, which some people thought was unethical, because he was trying to get the lesser charge. And then on the lesser charge, he's acquitted today. And all I was saying was I was surprised, but some of the people applauded in the courtroom, and I thought that was significant. I'm not saying I would have applauded if I were there. I wouldn't have, because it's a tragic situation.
You spoke up real quick and said they applauded. You were all for that, and you brought up that you have a right to. You don't have a right to stand your ground. You have to try to get out of the situation.
In New York, not every state. In New York.
In New York, right, where they were.
Well,
Yes.
let me just, and Jack, listen, I appreciate you calling in. It's a
You
good.
disgust me, Leonard. You disgust me.
All right. Well,
I'll
Jack.
talk to you later.
Well, Jack, listen. I don't think anything Leonard. I can only speak for myself. I don't think anything Leonard has said disgusts me. Now, if Leonard said that Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero, then that would disgust me, and that would probably get me going a little bit. But I listen, Leonard we just have a disagreement on whether he should have been charged and convicted on something. But I don't think any of Leonard's opinions are disgusting. I make it very well known on this show if any of my guests say something that gets me heated. My skin didn't turn red for anything that he said, so that means it didn't disgust me. 702-22, we could all disagree. 702-221-7283. Tyrone is next. Hey, Tyrone, what's going on?
Hey, good afternoon. Couple of things. You heard, the Dred Scott decision from way back when, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, then that the black man the Negro has no rights that the white man must respect, and that's alive today in this country. And the mere fact that the thought that if the colors were reversed, that Penny would be going to jail.
Well, I think Leonard agrees with you. I think Leonard agrees with you on that, right, Leonard?
I would disagree that there's no rights, because in the Chauvin case, him and some other people went to prison. Yeah. So you can't say they don't have no rights.
So I agree with you, Leonard. But Tyrone, just hang on one second. Here's the problem with that, though. If there were no innocent bystanders, I think we'll agree on this. If there were no innocent bystanders in the George Floyd case, meaning people with cell phones that recorded that,
the girl with the cell phone that recorded it,
right? But the police would have lied.
I think it would have turned out differently if it wasn't.
Nobody would have been arrested.
I don't know about that.
I don't think anybody would have been arrested, because the only video surveillance would have been from law enforcement. And without, I go back to Rodney King. If there wasn't a video of Rodney King being beaten, none of those officers would have been brought to justice. Now, I'm not saying every officer conducts themselves that way, but I can almost guarantee you, in my opinion, that if there weren't innocent bystanders, that if that happened in an area where there was no public and it was just the officers, Derek Chauvin would still be a police officer today. I guess that's where, and Tyrone, I don't speak for you. I don't speak for black people, but I think that's where a lot of black people, in my opinion, are frustrated that if there isn't video surveillance of that, that's my opinion.
Do you agree that it would have been different?
Well, let me say this. Go ahead. It's amazing how people like your guests will use one incident where so-called justice was served, but you have hundreds of other incidents where justice was denied. And like Martin Luther King said, justice denied for one is justice denied for all. And the fact that you have a man choked out on a subway train, he did not attack anybody. And the police, and I think your guest is a former police officer.
Yes, 25 years, yep.
The police are supposed to meet equal force with equal force. So if they want to use the fact that he's Marine and he's trained, well, his training should have told him about that ethic or that method.
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. Let me ask Leonard about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Daniel?
Daniel, yeah.
Daniel.
Oh, no, this is Tyrone.
Oh, Tyrone, sorry. Yeah. Tyrone, so a couple of different points. As a police officer, we would have had to handle the situation differently. Our goal is to control a situation, to take someone down, get them under control, and hopefully not have to escalate the use of force. But if you're a citizen and a Marine, part of the problem is I checked with some of my veteran friends about the use of force, and basically what they said is if you're a military police, you have a continuum to follow. But if you're just military, they give you a out in the field type use of force continuum, which is, mostly you're in a deadly situation. So what I'm saying is, as a citizen, he did not have a use of force continuum that he had to follow by law. And so he decided to go to a chokehold, which was, I don't know if that's that's how he was trained or not. He may have been trained to do that. He may have not. That part of it, I don't know.
Yeah, understood. A fair point. My point stands, which is when the guy is unconscious, and I'm not buying the fact if he didn't know he was unconscious or not. I think he's lying when he says that. But when the guy is unconscious, you want to flip him on his stomach. You want to hold his legs down. Okay, fine. Keeping him in a chokehold, no matter how hard the chokehold is, after the man is unconscious, leads me to believe that he was acting in a way where he had no regard for this guy's life. That's where my problem was in that minute where he's unconscious. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Joe. Let's go to who are we going to next here? All right, let's go to Mark. Mark is next up on PTL. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Brian. How are you?
Hey, good.
I'd like to make a couple of points to your guest. The first point I'd like to make is that by the way you're sounding, sir, I have no doubt. Now, I might be wrong. You might probably say, well, I didn't, but no doubt that you somewhere along the line abused your power the way you're talking. And to even consider that this Marine that somehow could be innocent of charges, by a jury, but by the law, no, he's not innocent by the law. It's just that people are fed up. Now, I served in the military, and I don't know where you're getting this nonsense from your friends, that people are basically, military soldiers are basically given handbooks on how to act at wartime, on who they can shoot at and who they can't shoot at. That's bull crap. No one gets handbooks on that. The only thing we're taught is that soldiers that are surrendering, you don't fire upon. That's the only instructions you get before you.
Well, let's hang on the line. Let's let Leonard respond to that.
But I have one more thing to say to him.
Okay.
But he can answer that first.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So I guess there is always I guess you're tempted to abuse your power, and some do, but I can tell you that the facts. The fact is I was never investigated for any type of misuse of force. I did not get in any shootings. I was never disciplined in a 25 career, which is very unusual and very rare. I was a supervisor. I was a sergeant and a lieutenant for most of my career. So I was basically the management over, people who are A-type personalities, A-dogs. And it's not easy to manage those kind of people. But to come out of a career and not have any stains on your background is somewhat unusual. But I do understand, and I can tell you, I was the type of supervisor that I would put a stop to that kind of force.
Right. My final comment is that, sure, you no charges against you, no investigations. That doesn't mean you never abused your power behind the scenes. Come on, man. When cameras aren't rolling, maybe slap the guy that didn't really need to be slapped. That's breaking the law.
I understand, Mark, but come on, Mark, hang on, Mark, hang on. I'm going to let you say your last point. But to be fair, if he hasn't been investigated for anything and he has no stains on his record, I think this is just my opinion, Mark. I think it's very unfair to assume that he abused his power. I think that's a little bit unfair, but go ahead, make your final point.
I know it. Let me just interrupt 1 second. I know it's hard to believe, but I was the kind of sergeant and lieutenant that would pull people off the pile and say, that's enough. That's enough. You got him. And because when the adrenaline's pumping, sometimes people get carried away. But that's how I was. That is the truth. But go ahead, sir.
All right. My final point, the first is that I don't know what friends you're talking about, but soldiers don't get military handbooks on how to act at wartime. The last response is that you are real quick to bring up a fact, or not a fact, an example to show that how Penny didn't break the law by some guy on a plane that brings out a suitcase and yells bomb. That's an extreme example. You're not talking about anything like that. The guy that he, in my opinion, should have been convicted on manslaughter, had no weapon, and said, how many minutes did that guy have a chokehold on him? How many minutes?
3 minutes, I believe.
I think
3 minutes.
I think it was 6, but it was
6?
So at the 5-minute mark is when he lost consciousness. And then he kept him in a chokehold for like another minute or so. But whether it's 3 or 6.
That could have been a bad example and maybe a false equivalent. But my point was that I was trying to lend to the mindset that if you go in front of the public at large and you don't know who's in that public and you threaten to kill people, that I'm not saying it was right, but you have to expect a response. And yes, maybe he was mentally ill, but he also was asking for water and food, so he wasn't that mentally ill.
But to your point, I'll say this. I think that the same use of force should be used. Example, if somebody's on a plane with a suitcase that says, I have a bomb, you don't know if they're mentally ill. They're most likely lying, I would imagine, because it's very difficult to get through airport security with a bomb these days, which is a good thing. Jump on them, handcuff them. Don't put him in a chokehold for 8 minutes. Restrain him so that he doesn't have access to his suitcase, and worry about that later. But don't keep him in a chokehold and then he becomes unconscious and kill him. Same thing in this case. Okay?
Can I address the training issue?
Sure.
So I spoke to a military police officer, and they absolutely have a use of force continuum, where what I said to Brian was that I wasn't able to find out exactly how they're trained, and that most of the military goes into the field with some training, but I don't know specifically. And I guess I should have been more clear about my point. My point was police are taught arm bars and takedowns and wrist techniques and leg techniques. So I don't know if the Marine had only been taught things like chokeholds, or if he had training in how to subdue a person in other ways. That I should have been more clear, but that was my point.
Yeah, understood. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Why don't we go to RJ? RJ is next up on PTO. Hello, RJ.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, I had to push back on your guest, Leonard. I think he's very
Leonard's getting roughed up.
I can handle it.
Yeah, he can handle it. So, look, I want to say thank you for your service, but it's really hard to say that when you don't respect someone's judgment. And it's hard to respect a lot of police officers' judgment because of the things that they do. In the Penny case, justifying that, I think you said you justified what he did. I've been around crazy people before. I've never reacted to where I put them in a chokehold or even thought about doing anything like that. Most people just ignore them. They're just popping off. There's no justification on jumping up and grabbing someone physically. They haven't harmed you or physically put their hands on anyone, and you put them in a chokehold. Now, in chokehold training, it only takes anywhere between 8 to 15 seconds. And when you're trained to do that, that's when you relieve the pressure, because at that point is when that person is unconscious. When you hold a person's neck or choking them for a period of 6 long minutes while on the floor, you can feel the tension in their body. You can feel their muscles contract. You know when that person is going limp. You don't continue to hold a person around their neck and choke them for 6 long minutes, restricting their oxygen. That is murder, sir. And I don't understand why you don't understand and see that. It's clearly murder to me.
I respect your opinion, and it does say in the article, I didn't read the police report, but it does say that Perry loosened up a little bit while he was holding him for the police. And
in the police report? Yeah, I believe that.
I didn't read the police report. Well, what I mean is, all I have is what was put out in the news, and I understand what you're saying, and yes, it could have been handled differently. I don't disagree with that at all, and he may pay the price for that civilly. But what I'm saying is, if you have a justice system and a jury, and they acquit him on both counts, you can have your opinion, but that's not what happened.
Well, evidently the jury had their opinion. I don't think they had the right facts. You don't choke someone out for 6 minutes and call it justifiable. It's ridiculous. You can subdue someone. You can hold them down. That's no problem with that. I have no issue with that at all. That's justifiable. But choking them out and restricting their oxygen, that's murder, man. Come on. This is a little common sense.
Listen, I tend to agree with you a little bit more, sir. I appreciate the phone call. It's funny. Somebody on social media, an imbecile, says, why would a good cop come on this show? So to the imbecile who makes a statement
that's
like that.
why.
Yeah. To the imbecile who makes a statement like that, I have always considered myself pro-police. I have been involved in charity work with law enforcement and police officers who've been shot on the job, but I also call out bad policing and good policing on this show. I remember the shooting that took place at UNLV. I had nothing but praise for those officers who stopped more innocent people from dying, those on October 1 who anybody who puts themselves in front of danger to save lives. So while I am also pro-police, I am also pro-Black Lives Matter movement, not necessarily the people that run the organization, but the movement of equality. Call out good policing and bad policing. And maybe that's a problem in our media where they only seem to talk about bad policing. Maybe that's an issue that needs to change.
Shouldn't we give them both sides? Shouldn't we give everyone the truth and the legal issues and the opinions so they can decide for themselves?
Absolutely. So for some ignoramus to say, why would a good cop come on the show as opposed to what?
I don't understand the question.
Why? I want bad cops coming on the show? Like, I want a good cop coming on the show. I want somebody with credibility coming on the show. Now, I do have some people on the show, Leonard, that don't have the most credibility, not you, political people like Tina Peters, who I had on, who's now in jail, but that makes for good radio. But I want someone who's a good cop on the show, especially when we talk about these kinds of issues. So to answer that stupid question, I want good people in law enforcement.
Well, I lost my left knee being a cop.
Right.
They had to completely remove it and put a fake knee in, and as a result of action in the field.
Mm-hmm. Well, because you have credibility. Like you said, you've never been, charged with anything. You've never had any major incidents or shootings or really anything.
Correct.
By the way, not to say that if you're involved in a police shooting, that makes you a bad cop. There's plenty of police officers that are well within their right to use deadly force. But you haven't been in any of those situations, and you seem to be someone who prided yourself in de-escalation, and that's what I would consider a good cop. There are police officers out there that are not very good at that. I think
Well,
some
as a
are.
lieutenant, I was a watch commander over the whole city most nights for years, and I handled all the murders, all the barricades, all the sexual assaults, set up, called detectives. So that was my responsibility to make sure that they were investigated properly.
And that's a lot of responsibility. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Jeff. Jeff is next up on PTL. Hey, Jeff, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, I retired in 2013 from the Army. That was about the time we started doing combative training.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. So the move that Penny had him in is called a rear naked chokehold. You're taught and trained in the military. You hold your hold, until you feel there's no longer a threat.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way you hold that hold.
Right.
If Neely was, if he was still moving and jerking around and pushing around, you're going to continue to hold it until you feel the threat is no longer viable. And everybody's talking about, well, let him up. Well, you don't know what this man's got in his pockets or in his backpack you don't know anything about this man.
Okay, so can I jump in real quick? Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
You're right. He didn't know anything about this man, could have had a weapon on him. You're absolutely right. But I don't think that we should assume that he has a weapon on him. At the same time, why not just put him on his stomach and restrain him? Why keep him in a chokehold? Now, you said your responsibility, and I agree with you, if there's a threat, what threat was he when he was unconscious? Why would you continue to put him in a chokehold? Now, you could say, well, he was faking it. Okay, fine. But why not just release him? There were several other men there. He wasn't by himself. There were a couple other people with him helping him. Why not flip him over on his stomach and just hold his legs and his arms down until the police get there? That's where my issue was with what Penny did. Not even necessarily putting him in his chokehold as much as keeping him in a chokehold when the man was unconscious.
Can I make a distinction about the chokehold for a second?
Sure.
If you'll indulge me. So the LVNR, lateral vascular neck restraint, is when your arm cuts off the blood flow to the brain at the jugular. And then you pass out in a few seconds, but you have to continue to hold it for it to continue to escalate and be detrimental to the body. A chokehold to us is across the esophagus. It's across the throat. In that situation, you can crush the esophagus, you can cut off the air, and...
well, clearly that's what happened here.
I don't know if they made a distinction.
I mean, he died.
Yeah, I think he may have had him in a chokehold, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, he died because of the chokehold. Go ahead, sir.
I think it was called. From what I've seen, it's the rear naked chokehold, which is pretty much the exact same thing.
Okay, but was he when he was unconscious? Was he a threat?
I don't know if he was unconscious. You don't know. You don't know the.
No, we do know actually.
What?
No, we do know because it was said.
No.
Okay, but we do know he was unconscious because that was proven in the courts.
Perry did testify that he did not know.
Right. So you could testify that you don't know, and that still might be true. But regardless, he still kept him in a chokehold as he was unconscious. Right.
And when the police, when first responders first got there, he still had a pulse.
He still had a pulse, but he was also unconscious. So again, my point still stands. When somebody is unconscious, in my personal opinion, and you're not even in law enforcement, you're just trying to, you don't want this person to harm anyone. There's no reason to keep him in a chokehold, which is what he did. And this goes back to my original point. I believe this is a dangerous precedent we are setting in this country, and this is where me and Leonard, disagree, which is fine. But if somebody poses a threat verbally to somebody in society, we are saying it's okay to keep somebody in a chokehold and kill them. I have a serious problem with that.
No, I don't agree that that's what Americans are thinking. And they, the majority of Americans, they look at that and they see two different sides of the story, just like you and me, just like you and the police officer. You see two different sides of the story. So, America doesn't believe, I could go out and kill somebody now. Nobody
but that's what happened though. Now, even though he hasn't been convicted of a crime, those are the facts, and that's what happened. He was verbally threatening people on a subway. He didn't have a weapon on him. He never made physical contact with anybody. He's dead. Why is he dead? Because Daniel Penny, whether it was his, I don't believe he wanted to try to kill him, but whether that's the case or not, we have one man that's dead because Daniel Penny kept him on a chokehold even after he was unconscious. Now, you could say most Americans don't think a certain way, but that's the reality of the situation. He was not convicted of a crime, but you had a man that was threatening people without a weapon, that didn't make physical contact with anybody, and that man is now dead. Those are just the facts.
Well, I agree. He's dead. We can't. We've got past that. But the problem is, everybody assumes that Neely didn't have a weapon. You don't. The last thing you want to be is the wrong person on an assumption.
So why is it so?
Speculate.
You can't speculate. It doesn't matter.
You start to speculate.
And this is where me and Leonard, I'm sure,
go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I mean, what? So if police officers are approaching a suspect, does that mean they shoot anybody because they don't know whether they have a weapon or not? No, you have. Get your hands in the air.
If we speculate, we can be here all day.
Of course. Yeah. Keep your hands out of your pocket.
Exactly.
Well, that's what you're doing, though. You're speculating. Okay. The bottom line, no weapon was brandished. Okay. No weapon was brandished. No physical contact was made. I'm just giving you facts. We could have different opinions, but you can't say, well, Daniel Penny didn't know if he had a bomb on him or a knife or a gun. I mean, come on.
Well, he did. They did drop the charge of manslaughter because they knew they weren't going to get it because the jury was deadlocked, which I think that was possibly unethical, but he did it anyway. And then today they acquitted him on criminal negligence, which is a very low bar.
Right.
That means that you did something that
without the intention
most people would know is going to result in killing someone. And they they acquitted him on that. Right. So like I said, I didn't read the report, so I don't know every minor detail, but there must have been a reason. I mean, New York is pretty liberal, and they decided to acquit him on that. So that's the facts.
702-221-7283. Let's go to Dwayne. Dwayne is next up on PTL. What's up, Dwayne?
Hey, how you doing, Brian?
Good.
Hey, I was a police officer for 27 years. I retired. And
thank you for your service.
The first thing that you're taught when you're doing use of force is you never say you're trying to kill someone. You always say, I'm going to stop the threat. That's the first thing you do. Mm-hmm. He stopped the threat. Penny stopped the threat. He put the man in a hold, which kept him from committing any bodily harm to anyone on that train. At that point, when he knew he was under control, he should have released that hold.
I agree.
And because he did not do that, that individual died.
Couldn't agree more.
We can go back and forth all day and say, well, maybe he had this and maybe he had that. Like you just said, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. The facts were already presented. The problem is our justice system and those that are running our justice system to a point do not give the same amount of energy to a person of color that they give to other people.
In general, I would agree with you. I want you to talk to, so Leonard, why do you this is a guy like you who has 25 plus years in law enforcement.
I agree with him. I agree that if it was I'm pretty sure if it was a minority or black minority, that I believe the people would have been a little bit more outraged. I'm sorry, that's my opinion, and I know it's not popular, but that's
okay,
what I
so we
believe.
probably all agree on that, but he disagrees with you in a sense of he should have released him from the chokehold.
Couple things.
Yeah.
So I was a use of force instructor. I was also a defensive tactics instructor, and in court, I used to be able to apply any hold and show that it does not cause pain, it does not cause injury, it does not cause death. However, as the person starts to resist, because my goal is control. So as they start to resist and get out of control, that's when these techniques start to put pressure on elbows and wrists, and they become more.
But one hold you would not do in court is a chokehold, because it has been illegal for how long?
Well, I can tell you our policy is you can't even use the LVNR.
Right.
You can't even use the lateral restraint in our policy, and you definitely can't use a chokehold. Now, if it's life or death, let's say, for example, you go in a house and there's
That's
a male
different,
on top of a female and he's stabbing her, then you can use whatever you want.
Anything you want, right.
But even the
Right.
LVNR was not, we were not allowed to use it even for control.
And also in the military, so I worked for an agency which dealt with people with PTSD and had issues of having violence sporadically, right? So we used to be taught what we called a neck restraint. But because of this, situations like this, they were no longer allowing that to be even taught to the officers to even restrain an individual. So him being in the military gave him that training, but it also gave him a higher level of responsibility towards the way he used.
Yeah, see, I agree with that. And thank you, thank you for your service, sir. I would also say this would pertain to an MMA fighter, whereas you have these skills and you can kill somebody with your hands. Many of these fighters probably could within 5 to 10 seconds. But you're not allowed to use that, and you have a higher responsibility not to use any of those skills that you have. Unless it's a dire situation. I would say the same should be applied towards somebody like a Daniel Penny, like it would to a police officer, in that they did serve this country honorably. He had skills that the average person didn't have. And again, I agree with the caller. It goes back to what I've been saying all along, is that, okay, there was no threat. He's in a chokehold. He's was in some dire straits there for at least a minute where he became unconscious. Daniel Penny should have released him, put him on his stomach, hold him down. That's where I think he was at fault.
Let me ask you this. If the Marines are trained to go into the field, to go to other countries, and they have a deadly force, they're taught some deadly force, they're going there under different circumstances.
True.
They're going there to be shot at and shoot back, basically.
Right.
So there's really they don't have a duty to try and de-escalate or to talk to people. So what I was saying before is, I don't know what kind of training he has, and maybe he was only taught, I'm speculating, maybe he was only taught a neck restraint and not really taught how to control people.
And that's a good point. And obviously you can't pertain, somebody in Al-Qaeda to somebody on a subway that's screaming and yelling and threatening people. There is a difference there. 702-221-7283 is the number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation. Let's go to Jason. Jason is next up on PTL. What's going on, Jason?
Okay, I'm just going to say one thing and one thing only. I'm just going to say now vigilante is allowed. And so if we have the KKK or somebody say, I'm going to kill an N-word today, we have a right to kill them. I'm just letting you know that you have put the fear in black people now that it's open season because they could get away with it now.
Well, that's my fear.
Like I told you before, Brian, 1861, period. I'm letting you know that now we are feared that it's open season with Trump in office and everybody knowing they can do whatever they want because of Penny. I'm telling you, this is going to be
so Jason, hang on the line. Jason,
travesty of the law.
Jason, hang on the line here for a moment. So, Leonard, this is exactly what I'm talking. Okay, he didn't hang on the line. That's okay.
No, but I think he makes a valid point, and the point is, under similar circumstances, okay, if it's an equivalent, not a false equivalent, but an equivalent to the same situation, then I would agree with him that they're saying yes. And remember, this is New York
but if
State.
somebody calls a black person the N-word, that's horrible. That's disgraceful. But I wouldn't want somebody to put them in a chokehold and kill them either, as much as I might hate that individual.
But that's a false equivalent.
Right. But that's what the caller was saying.
But the caller is saying the right thing because he's saying under the same circumstances, with the same set of facts, that New York State has said that that's justifiable.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me be clear: white, black, orange. I guess I'll put Donald Trump in that equation when I say orange. If somebody's acting irrationally and verbally threatening people, I think the first thing you should do is call the police. I understand you're in a subway. It's going to take a few minutes at a minimum for them to get there. And if there must be some physical altercation,
I wouldn't have gotten involved. I would have called. I would have called.
That's what I would have done.
And just observe and kind of see how it's going to go.
And I think I agree. And I think, Leonard, where you'll agree with me also is that when it gets physical, usually bad things can happen. If somebody gets physical with another individual, if any of them have a weapon on their person, it's probably going to be taken out. More people could die. So I would also, to the contrary, say Daniel Penny, while some people will call him a hero, it could have ended even worse if, in fact, that there was a weapon on the individual. So people have to think about that before they put their hands on somebody. I understand you're in a subway. If you're on a sidewalk, I would say just walk away, go about your day, try to ignore it, and continue. I understand if you're on a subway, you're trapped in there for a period of time. But when people get physical and act as vigilantes, sometimes it can end worse for that individual.
He may have reacted consistent with his training, too. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, but maybe we can find that out. I'm sure he'll do interviews. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Paul. Paul is next up on PTL. Hi, Paul.
Hey, buddy. I think this is a reflection of more of how the society is going towards that direction. We have a president that caused an attempted insurrection where they beat police officers. And day one, he's going to go in there, even though they admitted to abusing and hitting police officers, he's going to let them go out of jail. We got Kyle Rittenhouse with the skateboard. Someone attacks him and he shoots them down. He shouldn't have had a gun. He should have never been there. I just think overall, this is where this country is headed. Violence seems to be that. I've never even been in a fight, Brian. You know what I did? I walked away when somebody called me names. But people don't do that anymore. They want to prove what a real man they are. And I'm not saying the guy was right or wrong. I don't really have an opinion because I just don't know enough about it. But as a rule of thumb, this country seems to just accept violence as a norm. And I think Donald Trump has numbed a lot of people to saying Liz Cheney should be in front of a firing squad. They made fun of Paul Pelosi's husband. You know, his son dressed up with the hammer, right? And made fun of it.
Yeah.
Trump called them hostages. He said the people who were arrested for January 6th are hostages.
And patriots.
And patriots. And he was going to release them.
Yeah, which is an abomination. But yet there are a lot of people in this country that think if you assaulted police officers on January 6th, including Clay Travis, who is an imbecile, by the way, who went on a national TV show and said that, yes, Donald Trump should release all the January 6th prisoners, including those who assaulted police officers. If you're one of those people, not to quote Hillary Clinton, because I don't always agree with her, but when she called you a deplorable, she was talking about people like you. And we're not talking about people who went in the Capitol, who maybe destruction of property, who did some stupid things. I'm not saying they should be in jail for 10 years, but we're specifically talking about the most serious of crimes. Taking police officers' fingers, okay? Attacking them with their own batons. Bear spray.
Pulling their guns. Cops were begging for their lives.
But this is the guy who's going to be the next president of the United States, and you've been in law enforcement for a long time. Does that offend you when a guy like Donald Trump says they're hostages and patriots and they attacked people like you?
Well, they have people like Matt Gaetz saying that it was a pleasant day and that they were just walking through. And then they show video of them walking through peacefully. But if you, and this may be a bad equivalent, but if you look at some of the video of school shooters, they walked in very peacefully.
Yeah.
You know, with a rifle. And they walked in very peacefully. And then they turned and shot a bunch of children. So walking in peacefully is...
That's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Irrelevant. They shouldn't have been there.
Yeah,
irrelevant.
Can I ask your guest a question? I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead. Sure. Leonard, go ahead.
Leonard, just out of curiosity, and listen, I happen to be a Democrat, but I'm very middle of the road. I voted for Ross Perot. I voted for Bush. I voted all over the map. I vote for the best candidate. I don't understand how police officers can see something like January 6th and then say that the Republican Party backs the blue when they're taking a crap on Nancy Pelosi's desk and hitting police officers and one of them died. I guess I'm having a really hard time as a former Republican. How are they justifying supporting this guy that's going to release people that physically assaulted police officers. How do they justify
they were
that?
brainwashed by a flim flam, by a con man. And I can tell you that I'm a Democrat. I was a union president for many years. I was a lobbyist. I went to Carson City and I lobbied for collective bargaining and retirement and things like that. But I can tell you, and this is a fact that anybody in Nevada can look up, when those collective bargaining agreements for police, that's our contract, the retirement, the heart and lung, when those bills came in front of the legislature, the Republicans never voted for police. They never voted. We always relied on the Democrats. We always relied on the Democrats to come around and vote on the bills and push them through. And thank God, Nevada, they almost have a supermajority this year and this term and last term. They only missed by one. So in the Assembly, they missed by one, and they should have a supermajority. The Senate also, they missed by one. So what I'm trying to tell you is 75 to 80% of my membership was Republicans, and I used to ask them why they would vote against their own best self-interest, and to be honest, they would just get mad at me.
By the way, for the record, I didn't even know Leonard was a Democrat, so I did not even know that. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to David. David is next up on PTL. Hey, David, what's going on, man?
Hey, Brian. I think kind of one of the main takeaways we can, take away from this thing with the Daniel Penny, Jordan Neely case is that it's really in Americans' best interest to just try their best to just get out of these liberal cities like New York and Chicago and Baltimore. Because I've been to all those cities, unfortunately, multiple times, and I see how bad they are. And I know it's not practical for people who live there to just up and leave. But seeing what these things are turning into, I think it's really in people's best interest, if they can, to get out of these cities just in general.
So you think all the major crimes in this country are only committed in what you would call liberal cities? I disagree with that assessment that you're making.
Well, I didn't say all the major crimes, but the majority of cities in the country are liberal, and they're pretty much all very terrible. I mean, they're rampant with crime.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Not statistically.
Sure.
Statistically, it's not. And I was surprised. I thought in New York City that a homeless guy who was mentally ill would probably get more deference from the citizens in New York City. But they, as liberal as they are, they still saw it.
Jordan?
They still backed the Marine who engaged and defended. So I was a little surprised because New York is very left-leaning.
Oh, yeah. Look, there are Republican individuals in every single Democrat city and state. There's no question. And who knows, who was on the jury in terms of which way they swung politically. But I think this case was kind of pretty cut and dry, and I was not surprised at all when Daniel Penny was found innocent. But again, it just leads me back to what I was saying before. These city, I mean, I've been to Philadelphia more times than I can count. It's a terrible, disgusting city. And yeah, again, they're all ran by liberals. You can draw a very straight line to these cities.
So there are no cities that are dangerous in Texas or in Florida. There are no dangerous cities that have Republican mayors. Sir, that's completely ridiculous. And if you're talking about New York and Philadelphia, look at per capita how many people live in those cities. The chances are when you have a lot of people living in a city, more people than the normal everyday city, you're probably going to have more crime. And that's not because of liberal
Florida
Florida's
has some of this,
right. I was just going to mention Florida.
Republican,
yeah,
has some
look
of the
at the
high
drug
crime.
issues and the serious crimes that are committed in Florida. Are you saying people should leave Florida because it's liberal? I mean, I don't understand what you're saying. What are you saying, sir?
What I said is like all the other cities that are liberal. It's not like it's 50%.
Is Florida liberal? Is Florida liberal?
No, Florida.
Who's the governor of Florida?
I'm just saying statistically, that's not accurate.
It's not statistically accurate.
Are you saying these cities are not liberal?
I'm saying the crime is not higher in liberal cities than it is in.
Yes, it is. I mean, you look Chicago is like one of the worst cities in the country. Their gun crime and homicide rate is through the roof, and it's consistently liberal.
And that's because of liberals. That's because of liberals and liberal policies. Is that what you're saying?
Liberal policies. Mostly, yeah. I mean, there are other factors into. I mean, there are like areas that are primarily black or unfortunately.
Well, this is the problem with our country because when anything happens in this country, like crimes are committed, you blame liberals for it, and I find that to be. I don't know if you're being intellectually honest, quite frankly.
No,
sir.
I didn't. I'm not saying that all crimes are directly linked to just liberals. Of course, there are plenty of. Look, there are a lot of.
Where do you live?
Republican parts of the country.
Where do you live?
Where do I live? I live in Pennsylvania.
You live in Pennsylvania. Who's the governor of Pennsylvania?
Josh Shapiro.
How's Pennsylvania doing as far as crime, as the state?
as a state overall, it's not that bad. I mean,
not that bad. So
certain
would you praise Governor
because
Shapiro,
there's
who's a Democrat?
Sure. I mean, I think
Gotcha.
he's a relatively good.
So he's
governor
relatively
for,
good.
who he is.
Okay, well, thank you for your honesty. He's a relatively good governor. You're saying crime as a whole is not so bad in Pennsylvania.
Can I chime in for a
Go
second?
ahead, yeah.
Some
Just
facts.
stay out of
Please.
Philadelphia.
So
And
Missouri
then,
has the highest murder rate, particularly in cities like St. Louis and Kansas City. Louisiana is ranked second in a list of the most dangerous states, and Pennsylvania is ranked third in a list of the most dangerous states. So I think that to my point,
Missouri's liberal. I've never heard anybody say that Missouri's liberal.
Well,
That's very interesting.
So statistically, what he was saying
the
is
city in Missouri is
probably not completely.
So you might find a city in Missouri that might be dangerous. You could find a mayor that might be liberal. So because of that, you're going to take the entire state and blame liberals, even though he just said that Missouri is the most
when it
dangerous
happens
state.
multiple times. It's not like it's just these one-off times.
Okay, but he just gave you the statistics of 2 states that are 1 and 2 that nobody would consider a liberal state, and then your response is, well, you could probably find a city, and you don't even know
liberal states, liberal cities.
What
Plenty of
city in
Republican
Missouri then?
states-
Tell me.
We can twist the news however we want. I'm just saying that I think saying that the crime is automatically higher because it's a liberal state is not accurate. I would say that the liberal states have lighter penalties on crime, and they want less people in
undoubtedly
prison.
leads to more crime.
Well, that depends on if you believe in
people prison
recidivism.
If they commit terrible crimes, you keep them in prison. But I mean, look, again, it's not like these random one-off cities. It's so many. I mean, there are cities in California, there are parts of New Jersey, it's like all around the country. And again, Chicago is a prime example of just how much these policies have failed people. And I never really hear any legitimate argument. Yeah.
But Dave, you keep nitpicking and giving certain specific cities, but we're talking about the entire country and states. And you have Leonard, who just gave you a couple states that are overwhelmingly majority run by Republicans, and they're the top 2 states that have the most serious crimes. So your argument is not sticking, my friend.
And
with
I'm
all
not
due
saying
respect.
those states are worse. I'm just saying that it's pretty equal. You know, crime is crime. I don't think people choose a liberal state because they want
crime, but it's centered in these cities, which again are over like
the population's
7 out of the
a lot bigger.
right. That's true. I mean, it has a lot to do with population, but it's also 20 out of the top 30 cities. I believe 27 of them are ran by Democrats, and it's not like they've
I don't
only
know
been
what's
ran
that.
by
I
Democrats.
would need to see.
Yeah, I would have to look at that statistic. All I can tell you is Leonard gave the top 2 states in this country, with all due respect, where you have the most serious of
I'm
crimes.
not disagreeing.
Well, we're talking about a country, and we're talking about states, and we're also talking about states that are run by Republicans. So if a state is run by, Dave's logic, hear me out, Dave. If a state is run by a Republican as a governor, and overwhelming Republicans run the state, and it's one of the highest crime rates in the country, you don't want to blame Republicans. But if you have a city in that state that might be dangerous, and it happens to have a mayor that's a Democrat, you want to blame liberals. You can't have it both ways, my friend, okay? I'm not doing what you're doing. I'm not taking the left and the right. See, now I'm getting a little heated. I'm not taking the left and the right and blaming them. Hold on.
That's fine.
Well, yeah, because I'm passionate, and I think your argument is absurd, with all due respect.
Well, look,
if you have if you have a governor and running the state, last I checked, and you have a bunch of Republicans running cities, and you want to find one city that might be crime-ridden because they have a Democrat mayor.
Not one. That's
you
the
are
point. I'm not just picking
you
one.
are
I'm not
nitpicking.
nitpicking.
You talk about Philadelphia and New York and Chicago. Some of the most
And St. Louis, which is in Missouri.
Some of the
I would
most
agree with Brian. That's definitely cherry picking.
some of the most overpopulated cities in the country. When you have more people per capita, hence, you're probably going to have more crime. But yet, when we give you states that are overrun by Republicans, that are some of the most dangerous states to live in, you don't want to blame Republicans for anything, sir. I'm sorry, sir, but I disagree.
Because those are look, there are Republican governors, and then there are also the mayors and.
So you care about
Detroit.
I get it,
Albuquerque,
Dave.
Those are.
I get it, Dave, but you care about people that commit heinous crimes, then why would you vote for a guy that's a 34-count felon? If you care so much about crime and you care so much about bad people that are convicted of serious crimes, then why would you vote for a felon that says he wants to release people who attacked police officers on January 6th? And I'll take you for your word that you care about crime-ridden cities and you care about crime, so do I, sir. We agree. We're Americans. Then why would you vote for a guy that calls somebody who assaults a police officer a patriot and a hero? Please answer that.
Oh, look, I think for everything I like that he did, there's one or two things I think he did are dumb. I agree that that's a
No.
thing,
That's not dumb. Dumb is when you lock your keys in your car. That's not dumb. It's despicable. When you call people,
despicable. Yeah,
why would you vote for a despicable person? Then you admit what he said was despicable. If you care about crime, then why would you vote for a man?
He's a convicted felon.
Yeah. Why would you vote for a 34?
Well, because he was convicted on charges that a lot of people thought were completely
That's not accurate.
ridiculous.
That is not accurate.
Yes, it is. Yes,
if I would have, I'll give you an example. If me or Brian would have done it, we'd be in prison right now. Both of us would be locked up for a long time for the crimes that he committed, and also he has got to pay $86 million to a woman for defamation and for sexual mis.
Correct. So Leonard, so Dave, I agree with what Leonard
in a civil.
David, here's my argument again. I already talked about January 6th. You're talking about crime-ridden cities and you want to blame Democrats for these cities, right? But yet you don't want to talk about the guy who you voted for, who defied a subpoena for a year, who has 25 women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape, and as Leonard accurately pointed out,
accusations are meaningless.
Okay, well, he was found liable. I know all those 25 women are lying. I know you don't believe them. I know they're all,
but it's irrelevant what anybody thinks because he owes her $86 million.
Yeah, well, he owes her money and a lot of money, and he was found liable for sexual abuse. This is the 30.
In a civil case.
You can say whatever you want about your opinion of the 34 counts that he was found guilty of, but he's still a 34 count felon, and he's still the guy who called people patriots and hostages, who attacked people like Leonard, who physically assaulted
any of us
police
who
officers.
did what he did, I'm telling you, we'd already be in jail.
Agree. So I'm with you if you want to get together with us and say, hey, we got to do something about all the crime in this country. But don't preach to us about crime when you voted for a 34 count felon.
Then to the crime in these countries.
Here's what I think.
Because I have yet.
If I submitted a fraudulent document to get a bigger loan to the tune of millions behind fraud, I wouldn't even be talking on the radio right now. I'd be in jail.
Right. That's
so
true.
What he did was patently, obviously, what we call prima facie evidence wrong.
So to answer your question, David, okay, what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I would want Republicans and Democrats to come together a little bit more than they're going to be doing, because we know that Donald Trump is, for the most part, not willing to work with Democrats, to make sure that if people are breaking the law, nobody's above the law, and they're held to the highest account, including our politicians and including people that are in office. I find it hard to believe that you think that Donald Trump is that guy, that the party that calls themselves the Law and Order Party, who think that those people that did what they did on January 6th are some sort of heroes and freedom fighters. So
I never said he was that guy. I don't think he's going to fix these crimes in this country.
Well, they want to get rid of the FBI and close the building.
Yeah, that's what Kash Patel wants to do. He wants to close the FBI building, and these are serious people that you think are going to solve the problem.
Department of Justice.
They want to go after members of the media. They want to go after drag queens. They want to ban books. You know, Nancy Mace cares more about a trans woman going into a woman's bathroom than she cares about school shootings. And why would I say that? Because she's tweeted about women's bathrooms and trans women in bathrooms 500 times in the last 2 weeks. After a school shooting like Uvalde, when we lose 18 kids, she'll put out one tweet and she'll say, oh, thoughts and prayers. You think the Republicans are the people that are going to help us when it comes to law and order?
She has to care. She has to care about things in order of what you think is appropriate to care about.
And you think it's more, and you think it's more appropriate to put 100 times more energy into trans women in bathrooms than gun legislation?
Let me interrupt and give you something statistically accurate. Well, hold on one second. You brought up Illinois. Let's bring up Texas. Okay, so Texas murder rate is 4.7 per 100,000 people, and it's 13% higher than the average state. So does that mean that there are more? That's only one example of a state with a very high population.
Where are those murders happening in Texas?
I would have to look that up, but my guess would be
because that's a big. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but that's kind of telling one half of the story.
But the majority of the counties in Texas are Republican. I mean, you could talk about Dallas.
Yeah, I agree, but you could easily you could find out that a lot of those murders or gun crime or whatever is happening. It could be happening in very specific.
David, I'll leave you with saying this. Okay, I appreciate the conversation. I do. I really do.
Thank you.
But
I do too.
But here's the thing, David. Right, and you're welcome to call back anytime. Here's the thing. We're talking about a man who's going to be the leader of the free world again, who has literally pardoned murderers. And people on the right had a problem with Joe Biden pardoning his son, a gun charge that most people would have never even been seen in court for, a man who was on drugs at the time. I'm not condoning his behavior, but what I am saying is this. Donald Trump pardoned murderers, people who murdered civilians in Iraq. He literally, you can look this up, he pardoned murderers.
Look, Republicans are hypocrites. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I mean, I agree to a lot of what you're saying.
I appreciate you saying that, but my argument still stands is that when you say, liberals, get out of liberal cities. That's how this conversation started. When Leonard eloquently pointed out with the stats on his phone that the states that have the most serious crime are run by Republicans. So with all due respect, you're giving us hypocrisy. You're not willing to call out Republicans in those Republican-led states that have all that crime, yet you want to nitpick a few cities here and there.
And I misspoke about Texas. It's violent crime.
Right.
4.7 people per 1,000, not 100,000.
Right. Governor Abbott, as I like to call Governor Abhole, is what I like to call him. And in the Uvalde, Texas shooting at night, the day of the shooting, when they hadn't even counted how many bodies were killed and children died, he was counting his money in a fundraiser that he failed to cancel. So if you really want to talk about Republicans and violence, look at somebody like Governor Abbott and look at somebody like Donald Trump. Thank you for the call, David. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Joseph is next. Hey, Joseph, what's going on?
Ryan, how you doing, Leonard?
Hi there, Joseph.
I am a Marine Corps veteran, and I would like to get back on topic if you guys wouldn't mind.
Please.
Answer some questions for you regarding training.
Great.
All right. Well, let's start with this. He's age 24, correct? We were talking about Daniel Penny?
I don't recall his age. 26, my producer is telling me. Right. Yep.
26? Yep. Okay. Good enough for me. So my age is 42, and I was in the transition from the black boots to the fuzzy boots in the United States Marine Corps, and in that transition there was something called MCMAP, Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. It was developed right around 2001 and implemented right around there, okay? And the program has softened a little bit. We broke a lot of each other's bones kind of learning the program out, okay? But right in the beginning of this, we learned very distinctly the difference between a blood choke and an air choke. And we are distinctly taught to not air choke somebody because you are more prone to do damage that is unnecessary than actually knock them out. So right off the bat, if I just go with this, okay, it's fine to run up and choke him out, right?
Yeah.
Then he did it wrong in the first place.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's
After
where I think
30 seconds, if he didn't have optimum control, then it was upon him at that moment to regain a more proper control of said choke.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point,
Okay.
Leonard. I don't know if you want to respond
I'm
to
familiar with that program, and it's several different martial arts. One of the primary earlier in the 2000s was Krav Maga. Were you taught Krav Maga?
Yes, I was taught some of that, and I was also taught the more modified. I went through certain
I bet they
courses,
more
but I'm by no
modified it, because
means
let me
some
tell you.
Rambo guy.
Let me tell you my situation. I was trained and certified in Krav Maga. We were not allowed to use Krav Maga. It's an Israeli self-defense, but
yes,
in Krav Maga you were taught full commitment to every technique. Here's the problem: we were trained in it. I brought it to the department. I told them what the training was. I was certified, and they said we cannot use Krav Maga because police officers cannot run around doing full commitment punches and kicks and chokes and takedowns.
That is correct.
Everything is 100%. So my question is, if this gentleman was trained in Krav Maga as part of his martial arts training, and he's taught to just choke people out. If you're going to choke, that there's no, it's kill or be killed. I don't know if he was taught that.
We will get there. All right. So if we're going to go along those same standards, I can absolutely tell you, as a fact, that we used to choke each other out in the barracks all the time. Okay? We know when somebody's out cold.
Right.
I understand as well when somebody is under the influence of heightened dopamine levels. Okay? Yes, I am familiar with that. I do know what that feeling is. I understand how much you kind of can go into a haze if you're not disciplined.
No,
right?
I get what you're saying.
But I also recognize the situation. I really reviewed where the footsteps were taken early in a lot of this engagement period. And under no circumstance do I see it appropriate for him to go for an immediate neck choke.
Agree. And I agree. And that's where my argument stands.
Let me jump in for a second, because I started in Kodokan Judo, which is traditional judo, in 1969. I've been teaching it my whole life. And in competitions, not anymore, but back in the day, you were allowed to choke people out. You're allowed to use the gi around their neck and choke them out. And there's been many, many times where people were choked out and they were unconscious, but the other participant didn't know because of the way they were facing, or they were facing away, and the judges quickly jump in and they pull you off of the person who is out cold, and then they do resuscitation techniques.
Right.
But it's totally possible, and Penny did testify that he did not know that the person was dead, that he had passed. He didn't know.
Might have not known. Doesn't change my opinion, but you're right. He might have not known. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Cheryl. Cheryl is next up on PTL. Hey, Cheryl, what's going on?
Hi, good afternoon. I just wanted to say that, first of all, the caller before the last, his name was David.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that his argument is so intellectually dishonest that I hate to even give it any attention. But the idea that liberal cities, which in my opinion, it seems like he wanted to say cities with racial components that are other than white, and he just was not willing to be honest and say that.
So Cheryl, I agree with you. I want to ask you a question, if I may. I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me start by asking you this, if it's okay. You don't have to answer it. What is your race, if you don't mind me asking?
I am a Black American.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. So you're the perfect person then for me to ask this question to. So we're probably on the same side, I would imagine, with the Daniel Penny case. I do believe Daniel Penny should have been prosecuted for something. With that said, I don't like the message from, and I know this wasn't you, and they don't represent all Black people in this country. With that said, there were a few BLM organizers after the court hearings today that seem to incite violence themselves. And I understand their frustration. I get it. I'm on their side when it comes to this case. But I'm wondering how that makes you feel when you do see African Americans that are also inciting, at least it appears to me, inciting violence. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say this. I can't really speak to what they said because I didn't see or hear any of the comments. But I will say this, given the light of this particular outcome and what we know to be true in the past, and even leading towards the future with the Trump administration coming in, and now inciting, I believe, white supremacist groups to be more violent towards people who are not like them. I would say this. I don't condone or agree with the incitement of violence, but I will say this. There is a point in time when people are going to have to, as they say, stand their ground and let it count for African Americans the same way in which stand your ground counted for somebody like Zimmerman.
Can I just say something?
We can't allow people to be intimidated on the streets of America just for being what they're born as.
I agree. And the gentleman that
somehow we have to put a stop to that.
Thank you. And this is Leonard. But the gentleman that gave us that premise, it was completely inaccurate, and it was factually wrong. His premise was that in liberal cities there's more violence and nobody does anything about it, and we proved him wrong statistically. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you.
That point, let me just add this final thing.
Sure.
To that point, I understand that these are far right-wing talking points that they like to beat on.
Right.
And when you look at certain cities, it does appear that way. But I'll put everybody's mind at ease. Speaking as a black woman, and I will take this time to speak for black people and say that we don't like crime as much as anybody else don't like crime.
Right, and to
we
me,
want our streets clean.
And you're right.
We want to be protected.
Yeah, and you know what? I can't. And thank you for the call, my dear. I really appreciate you and your perspective. I hate it when people say black on black crime. I don't care whether it's a black person or a white person that commits a crime. Crime is crime, and people should be held to the same standard of the law. And I know you would agree with that. Black on black crime. Stop it with that stuff. I don't care what the color of somebody's skin. And if there's a crime that's committed, I don't care what the color of their skin is. Sadly, a lot of people do. Let's see, 702-221-7283. Who do we have next coming up here? I believe we have John. John is next up on PTL. What's up, John?
Hi, Brian. I just don't think your viewers, I must have missed it, but I think a key context to the Jordan Neely situation is that he violently assaulted 3 people prior to this event happening.
Doesn't matter. Irrelevant.
A 68-year-old woman was punched in
irrelevant.
the face.
John,
John, why
why
is that irrelevant?
I'm going to explain to you why. When that situation took place on the subway, what this guy did prior is irrelevant. Same thing with George Floyd. People say, well, George Floyd did this in his life. He's been arrested. I don't care if somebody's been arrested 1,000 times. It doesn't mean anybody can do whatever they want and free reign on an individual. And that's why I'm not going to just let you go down a list of the things that Jordan Neely did.
Can I tell you why I think it's relevant?
Well, you can think it's relevant, but according to the law, it's not. You can tell me why, but I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, because why was he even out of prison for assaulting 3 separate people in 3 separate events?
Yeah, but the Marine didn't know that. The Marine
didn't know that. Nobody on the subway knew that.
I understand all that. But he was out on the streets. Why was he out on the streets?
Okay.
Well, his prior history could not have even been brought up in the trial unless the defense attorney brought it up, and I don't know if he did.
My
but that is
understanding is he
something that
didn't.
you cannot even use against people in the court of law.
That is why I say it is not relevant to this case, because the defense attorneys weren't even allowed to bring it up in court. And
well, if they make a mistake and bring it up,
let me ask you a
yes,
question.
You can talk
Do you
about
think George Floyd's past was relevant to the knee on the neck for 8 minutes, sir?
Yeah, I don't think George Floyd should have been on the streets at all.
Okay, of course.
Hold
on.
He had 18 incidents
for pointing a gun at a pregnant woman.
Okay, listen to what I am saying. Are you saying that it is a Derek Chauvin defense, the knee on the neck for 8 minutes, which, by the way, he was charged for murder and convicted of, and you're saying part of his defense is, look at what this guy did 5 years ago? Is that your take, sir?
I'm not defending Chauvin. I'm saying but Chauvin was wrong, and George Floyd should have never been on the street.
Okay, but I understand.
He should still be in prison.
Okay, those are 2 different arguments, and we might agree on that argument. But my point
would you agree that Neely should have been in prison still?
John,
can I make a point?
Yeah, let me just answer him real quick, and then you have the floor. Saying whether it's relevant to the case, which I say it's not, is different than you asking me, should he have been on the streets? Do you understand the distinction I'm trying to make?
I just want to know your opinion. Though.
Okay, but do you understand that distinction? I will answer your question, but we'll answer mine. Do you understand that distinction?
Yeah, I completely understand.
Okay, good. So it's not relevant to the case, but I will still answer your question. In my opinion, somebody who puts a gun at a pregnant woman should be in jail for the rest of their life. Let me be very clear. Jordan Neely assaulted women. Jordan Neely had major psychological and mental issues, and he should have gotten the help that he needed, and this country failed him there. Now, if you want to say he should have been in jail, okay, but the guy had major schizophrenia, major mental issues. I'm not excusing the crimes that he committed. So, yes, I think when people assault people, I want them in jail.
Can I explain some of the legal issues? So, in a legal sense, you can only judge by what happened in real time at the time. Even the law says you cannot judge something with hindsight of 2020. In fact, that's a direct quote, that you have to judge on what actually happened at the time, what the Marine knew, what the other people observed, and why he took the action that he took. Now, in the court of law, like I was saying, if the defense brings up the past, which I think is a mistake, if they bring it up, then it could become an issue. But I don't know any judge that would allow anyone's record to come up at a trial.
All I'm saying, and I answered your questions honestly, John.
I just want to bring up one more point.
I will let you do that. I will let you do that. But I want to say this again. You said that it's relevant. You said it was relevant in the Neely case. It's not. You said it was relevant in the George Floyd case. It's not. Now, I'll answer your question, and we can agree that, yes, some of these people probably should have been in jail. Okay, fine. Agree. But it's not relevant when it comes to the actual case at hand, because if it was, it would have been allowed in court. So go ahead.
Okay, so you guys referenced earlier that there's no statistics to support violent cities. Liberal cities are more violent than others. And
as a whole, you can find
so
certain.
While I was on mute, I went on worldpopulationreview.com and the top 20 cities with the highest violent per capita. I know you tried to say per capita is different, whatever. Per capita: St. Louis, Detroit, Baltimore, Little Rock, Milwaukee, Rockford, Cleveland, Stockton, Albuquerque, Springfield. What do all these cities have in common?
Okay, I don't know. Do they all have?
Look up all their mayors.
Those are a lot of Democrats.
Look up all the mayors.
Okay,
yes, they're all Democrats.
So hold on. Let's backtrack here a little bit. I'm talking about states and the entire country. You're talking about cities. So we can go back and hold on. So we can go back and forth and talk about some cities that might have Democrat mayors, but you don't put any responsibility towards governors that run the state.
The statistics we put out were state.
Right.
We're not
right.
local. Yes.
But you don't put any responsibility. So let me get this right. In an entire state run by a Republican, you don't put any responsibility on the Republican. But if you can find cities in that state that have Democrat mayors, you're only willing to put the responsibility on a Democrat mayor.
We can do the same.
We can do the same thing you're doing, sir. You're playing games.
Let me respond to that. So if it was the governor's fault, then you would see the same crime statistics in other similar states.
So here's the difference. Here's the difference between you and me. I'm not saying it's the governor's fault. I'm not saying it's the city's mayor fault. Here's the difference between you and me. I'm not blaming Republicans or Democrats for cities or states that have crime. What I am blaming are Republicans and Democrats that are not willing to sit at the table and put some laws in place that would help communities. You're the one.
So you don't find it entirely coincidental that all 20 are all liberal?
I don't find it.
I
don't find it.
If you search on the internet, if I search for a while, I can probably find one that rivals that and says the complete opposite. I would have to know the details.
You're retired, aren't you? You should know those stats. Why don't you tell me then?
Oh, I don't memorize stats, sir.
So you think someone who's a retired police officer should know all the stats throughout the country?
I don't memorize.
All right. Well, who did you vote for president? Since you want to talk about stats. Who did you vote for, sir?
You're gonna conflate.
No, not conflating at all.
You're gonna conflate.
I'm conflating.
Yep, know where you're
it's
going.
not conflation. It's consistent.
It's consistency. It's not conflation. So let's try to be consistent, sir. Would you say that people that assault police officers are patriots and hostages? Let's try to be consistent.
Nope.
You wouldn't. Who made that statement?
No.
Who made that statement?
Not Trump, because I know you're going to say
no. Donald Trump literally made the statement and called them in multiple. Hold on. I never said that. I need you to focus, and I never said everybody that went into the Capitol assaulted police officers. Okay. Now you're being a moron. Listen, not taking. No, he literally said he was going to, and he was asked about that. He literally said on day one he wants to pardon everybody on January 6th. He didn't say a few people or people who didn't assault police officers. So I now ask you again, and let's see if you can be honest.
You're taking him out of context.
No, I'm not taking him out of context, and you're a fool.
No, he said that directly.
No, your entire phone call was out of context because you're a right-wing MAGA buffoon. You're a buffoon. And I ask you a very simple question. He specifically said and called them hostages and patriots, and he was asked to specify, and he said all of them on day one. He said it in an interview over the weekend, and you will defend and curl into a pretzel. So you want to blame Democrats for all of our problems, right, when it comes to crime, not the governors that run the states, which makes you an imbecile and makes you a right-wing buffoon. And then when I bring up Donald Trump and I bring up hostages and patriots.
He pardoned Michael Flynn.
Yeah, he pardoned Michael Flynn. Oh, no, you're taking him out of context.
No, he was working for Russia.
Have a nice day, you ass. Have a nice day. Anyway, we're at the end of the show. Leonard, I really do appreciate you being here. It got a little
saucy.
Got a little heated there at the end, but that's the way I like it. No, I really appreciate you being here.
I don't mind at all.
I appreciate your service, and you were a great cop.
Thank you. You're doing a good job, too.
Thank you. I really appreciate you being here, and even though we might disagree a little bit, I think we agree on a lot more things than we disagree on.
That's the American way, though.
Absolutely.
More people should do that.
Absolutely. And you have something called credibility, unlike some of the idiots that call into the show that have zero credibility and they just want to nitpick. Anyway, Leonard, thank you for being here. I'd love you on again, maybe even to talk about the CEO apprehension.
Yeah, we never even got to that.
We never even got to that. So I'd love to have you on again really soon, and we can do that, Leonard. And I really do appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate it. All right, everybody, that's a wrap. We got to skate. Check out my website, pushingthelimits.live. Again, it's pushingthelimits.live. Check out my website where you can donate, buy merchandise, and we will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great day, everybody.
Hey, everybody, are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie?
Marco.
Well, worry no more.
I'm here.
Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premium Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino. Just